Hey guys, David Robinson here. Welcome to the Apartment Investing Journey. Another great episode for you today. I've got a guest that I believe will be able to share some insight into 1031 exchange strategies, as well as working with brokers that specialize in commercial real estate and specifically 1031 exchange, facilitating 1031 exchanges. So I've got Alex Olson with me on the show today. Alex, thank you for coming on and sharing some time with us.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be here.
So Alex has helped clients complete over 50 million in sales through 35 plus transactions. And as I mentioned, he's an expert in helping 1031 exchange clients. He's based out of Kansas City and is an active real estate broker at Exchange CRE, and they serve clients that are looking for property in the Kansas City and Missouri market. So, Alex, that's obviously just a very brief bio, but our podcast is all about the journey. So, we'd love for you to go back a little bit and tell us about your backstory, how you got into the real estate space, and how you've transitioned into this specialty.
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me on and asking that question. I mean, I know every single person's journey is unique. Um, Mine's probably pretty similar to others you've had on, but basically, a little bit of twist here is that I really fell in love with the real estate world when my wife and I built our dream house. And that's a little bit different. And it's like, how does that apply to commercial real estate? Well, one, I've always had a fascination with the physical nature of real estate. Wanted to be an architect when I was a kid. Was horrible at math, so that was never going to work out for me. Um, and really, then when we built our house, there's other key factors in there than just hiring a builder and getting it done. So there's financing, which is a huge piece of building a house. You have a construction loan, you have a draw schedule, you're managing all the contractors. Yes, I had a general contractor kind of start out on it. And ended up managing about 40% of the build. You get to understand contractors' mindsets. You get to understand a little bit about real estate. And then come at the end of that, turns out we'd paid a certain price to get this house built, and we'd already built up. We did such a good job building it. We'd had several $100,000 in instant equity in it. And I was like, man, I've always wanted to invest in real estate. So how do I do that? Just like everybody else and their mom and dad, they've all read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I read it when I was, I don't know, 14. I didn't understand it. Not saying that I do understand it now, but I understand the concepts of it a lot better now. But I started just reading Bigger Pockets. I started reading all of Brandon Turner's books, and it was like, man, this is a lot easier than I thought. So I ended up buying a duplex, using some of that home equity line of credit. I bought a fiveplex, and then I bought 4 single family homes. And a lot of this was just intended to, how can I quickly get out of my day job as fast as possible? And so, that's where I started. And then, I was like, man, this money that's coming in, it's all tied to my home equity line of credit and these loans. It's not going to cash flow. Made the realization, like many of us maybe have, that I'm not going to be able to do this as a full-time job. I'm not a wealthy person. I was never a wealthy person. I didn't have a lot of cash ever. So I'm not ever going to be able to get out of my full-time job doing this. So I talked to a guy who actually, I tried to buy one of his houses when I was buying single family homes. We'd made a connection on it, and just my persistence, he's like, we should meet up. So I met up with him. Several conversations later, he's like, man, why don't you just go out and get your real estate license? You love real estate. I'm like, I don't want to deal with single family homes. I'm not doing showings for single family homes. And, my background is in consumer finance and economics and marketing. He's like, no, you could be a broker in the commercial world. And so then that's when I was like, okay, yep, that makes perfect sense. And I interviewed all the brokerage companies in town, it seems like, seeing where I might be able to fit in. Met Logan Freeman, who I know and talked to him. Within a month, I had my license. And then, kind of here I am, real estate agent. I bought some stuff before, learning from Logan on some of these other pieces. And there was a real need for buyers representation in the market. And I'll call it the, $1 to $10 million space. Um, and so that was kind of the first start to my journey.
I love it. Yeah, thanks for walking us through that. I am curious. You mentioned consumer finance, but what did you do in your previous life, your previous professional life?
Yeah, so I've always been an entrepreneur and kind of had some side hustles for most of my career. But my background was in marketing and advertising. So I ran a small dollar lending portfolio for a company here in town that had gone through, I've been there for 15 years. We've gone through a lot of changes and the world. So I learned a lot about banking and finance in that realm, even with lead generation and marketing.
Mm.
Learned a lot about that as well. It was a great, I had a lot of great friends there. But at the end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur and always wanted to tie whatever dollar I made to the activity I was doing. And in the corporate world, you can't do that. And so I had to finally, after 15 years, was looking for a new job and finally found one.
Yeah, you made one for yourself. That's great.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your specialty then, right? So you connected with a mentor that is familiar with the space, sort of had a system already fleshed out to a certain degree, and you saw that this was an opportunity for you to sort of step in and really, attack this particular niche, which
Mm-hmm.
was buyer representation in that $1 to $10 million space. So, what
Yep.
was it about that appealed to you, and why did you see it as a need in the market?
Yeah. I mean, and even taking that a step forward, that's, right into the 1031 exchange uh, clients. And we can talk about that as well. But the 1031 exchange buyers in these $1 to $10 million range, the reason why there's a need there is because there are so many people across the US, mostly California, Denver, at least in our market, these are kind of the investors that are looking in the Midwest, even East Coast, West Coast, whatever. They have, maybe a condo they bought, or maybe they rented out a house or whatever, and they're maybe tired of the low cash flow returns or the high taxes, or maybe even the horrible, in my opinion, the very poor landlord laws that they have in those states. Um, and so in the Midwest, we have all those advantages. And so when you're under a 1031 exchange deadline, you have a lot of specific needs. And then, oh, by the way, well, how the heck am I going to take my money from California, say, and put it into the Midwest? I don't know a property manager. I don't know a lender. I don't know an attorney. And so that system that we really put in place was designed around a white glove service of 1031 exchange buyers. So you have now, if you're coming from these different markets and you've got 1031 exchange deadline money, we can get you a lender that we know is going to close it out. I mean, I say this all the time to all of our clients, but anybody can put anything under contract. That's easy. The hard part's close it out. Same thing with a lender. Any lender can give you the world's most amazing terms, 2.9% APR, whatever. Um, but really, is that lender going to like the asset? Because this isn't just a straight up Class A asset or a Class B asset. Typically, it's got some value add to it. Typically needs a little bit of work, or it's near turnkey and still needs a little bit of time to get fully stabilized. And only specific lenders love that asset. We can bring that to them with a client who is, oh, by the way, very qualified because they have 1031 exchange money. So you don't need to do a ton of investigative work on them, and really just kind of, hold their hand through the whole process and close out the deal and make sure that your money is secure and you're going to be a cash flowing asset here in the Midwest.
So a couple questions to dig a little bit deeper into what you provide. If this is a 1031 exchange client, then the assumption is that they have experience in real estate. Obviously, they already own some sort of investment property that they're looking to exchange out of and into something else. So the argument has always been, right, that you're better off going and connecting with the listing broker because they have deal flow and they have pocket listings and off market listings that, if you're working with a buyer's agent or a buyer broker, that you may not have access to that. And so by working with the listing agent, there's a bit of a competitive advantage. What's
Mm-hmm.
your, take on that mindset?
Well, some of that is partially rightfully true. Um, there's a lot of great brokers out there. However, their listing agreement with the seller is a listing agreement with the seller. So their intention is to sell this property for the seller. Of course, they love double ending the commission agreement, which is totally fine. But our advantage is you're going to get a buyer approach to the property because we're tied to you, not to the property. So we have off-market listings that we generate ourselves, but we don't have a listing agreement with the seller, which is kind of personally it's dangerous to us as brokers because the seller could go out and sell it to somebody else, and that does happen. But we're willing to take that risk in that we think that we're so good at matching a buyer up with a seller that everybody's going to be happy. And so that's kind of the advantage that we definitely have is we've got tons of off-market deals that we've generated ourselves. And we have a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers that simply trust us that we're going to get a qualified buyer in front of them to close it out.
And so, just roughly speaking, how often would you say in representing a buyer that they end up buying a property that's completely off market, unrepresented? Maybe you sourced it for them. Well, more than likely you have sourced it for them versus helping them buy a property that's listed by another broker. Percentage wise, give us a rough,
Yeah.
estimation of what that looks like.
Yeah. So, and I've actually done this because that's what our primary business is. So we're looking at probably about 75% of our buyers representation is off market deals.
Interesting.
And of those 25% that was maybe on market, I would say almost all of those were with another broker that we've just developed a trust relationship where they're like, hey, Alex, I know you can bring a good buyer to this. Yeah, this is going to be listed, but see what your buyers think.
Yeah.
And because we can close it out, and they're not going to just tie it up. The common word that we sometimes hear is, "Yeah, I'll put that in a contract and tie it up and see what we can do." I'm like,
Right.
that's not really how we work. I mean, this property that we're presenting to you is a great deal, and the seller can go out and list this or sell it to anybody else. This is multifamily. It's not like this is, something that's vacant and isn't going to sell. It's going to sell.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of our approach is, working with great brokers too, as well as great sellers.
Yeah. So 75% deals that you're sourcing for your buyer clients. Why not, if you're able to source 75% of your deals direct to owner, why not pursue those listings as a broker?
Why
Why
don't we
not?
go after a listing?
Yeah, why not? I mean, if you've identified a potential seller, you've got a buyer in hand, why not secure your position as a broker and say, hey, you know what, seller, I've got a legitimate buyer here. This is how we work. We'll list your property for a fee, and we'll bring the buyer to the table. Why not go? Maybe you do. I shouldn't make the assumption that you don't do that, but yeah, explain that for me.
Yeah, I mean that's not my preferred way of doing business. I don't really like. I mean, it sounds harsh. I don't really like working with sellers. They hold all the cards, which is fine. But I really enjoy the working with buyers aspect. And to be frank, we can do a lot more transactions if our focus is with buyers. Why? Because
Mm,
there's a lot more buyers. And so if you're tied up with a seller, you have pretty, if you're going to do a listing, you got to have pretty strict standards and promises and guarantees to the seller. You're going to provide, sales comps. You're going to provide all these different services to them. You're going to show them how many clicks your website got, all those kind of things that, I mean, they're not really that important. What's important is getting your property sold. And so rather than focusing on all those, I guess, ancillary things, we want to focus on the transaction.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's tons of examples we have where our focus is, I mean, I'll give you an example. It's not even the one that I presented to you earlier, but there's a property right now. It's under contract. I've been working and talking to the seller for about 2 years, just, touching base with him. No, I'm not going to sell. Then I have this buyer client, who's like, this is the type of property I want. I want high income on it. I want a great location. He gave me some details. And so I matched them up, perfectly, because it was exactly what both of them wanted. He didn't want to put it on the market, and the buyer didn't want to buy something on the market. And so it was a perfect match. Now, it hasn't closed out yet, but on paper, it looks like it's going to be a perfect boom, boom transaction where everybody's happy.
And so the risk then becomes, in working almost exclusively with buyers, the risk becomes spinning your wheels with a buyer that's just, kicking tires. But the fact, and I guess the next question is, what percentage of your business is actually 1031 exchange buyers versus a traditional buyer that's out there, a legitimate buyer that's out there, ready, to move on a multifamily property? Give us a sense of that aspect of your business.
Yeah, that's 80%. So 80% of all the transactions we close out are 1031, buyers that are on a deadline. The other, of that remaining 20%, 95% are buyers that we've done transactions with in the past.
Yeah.
And that's not, just on purpose. It partially is because we're spending our time with buyers that are, very high likelihood of closing out a property. That's one. Two, they also have a need for us, in the marketplace. And then three, it is just the fact that, repeat customers, they know that we bring great off-market deals. And they also know that the deals that we do bring don't have a lot of shelf life, meaning they're going to be not available because some 1031 exchange buyer is going to buy it. So usually, and that's one of the things we're trying to do, is say, look, if I send you a deal to you, Mr. Smith, that means I'm pretty confident that you're going to want it. And you may not, but there's a high chance that, hey, look, if you have money, you're going to love this deal.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that we try to bring to the table as well.
Yeah, so you're working 80% 1031 exchange, 20% not, and you're really vetting the other 20%. And it sounds like the majority of those are past clients, so you've built a relationship there, and you have a level of confidence that, hey, they're going to perform. So great business model from the brokerage perspective, because you do have some surety that you're working with a legitimate client that's going to be able to move forward, whether it be the past client or the 1031 exchange. So let's give our listeners just a sense of what it would be like to work with your group. We talked about before the show recorded about a case study of a 32 unit where you helped a 1031 exchange investor purchase this 32 unit in a submarket of Kansas City. Maybe walk us through that at the beginning level. Like, how did the client come to you? Where are they coming from? Just sort of walk us through the process.
Yeah. So the client came to us. Obviously everybody knows Bigger Pockets. And, we're contributors on Bigger Pockets, actively engaging on the forum and blog posts. And so there was a blog post or a forum post. And from that post, this particular buyer reached out and said, hey, look, I'm interested. I need to find a replacement property for my 1031 exchange. I maybe did this kind of a little bit backwards to some people, but, I'm like, and oh, by the way, with this particular case study, this person had never purchased an investment real estate property before. So
Did they inherit the previous property or what?
So the previous property was their primary residence. And then they rented it out for a period of time. And then, 10 years ago, they got a different residence and they rented it out for a period of time. And then they sold it. And so then they had quite a bit of equity in this property. And we're like, what in the heck do I do with this? I've heard great things about the Midwest and Kansas City, but teach me. So we walked them through the process, right? Here's why Kansas City is a great place to invest due to, the economics of it, great job growth, great population growth, all those factors that a lot of people like about the Midwest, plus all the progressive nature of the city with the streetcar and booming downtown. So we got them on board with that. Then it was like, okay, well, I've now I'm on board with Kansas City, but I need a lender. I need a property manager. I've never invested in real estate before. Do I need to set up an LLC? So the answer to all those was yes, we can help. And we introduced them to the best in the business for this type of client and for this location. And so we put a whole bunch of different properties in front of them. So what about this property? What about that property? And at first it was, no, I want urban core. And then it was, no, I don't think I want urban core. I think I want something suburban. And so you go through their requirements. And finally, we found something that was a good deal for them. Actually, it was an on-market deal that was it wasn't listed on LoopNet, but it was a $4 million MLS deal, which is, pretty high price for the MLS in our area from an investment standpoint. And so it didn't have the eyeballs on it that maybe it would have. And so I knew the other agent as well over there, and we had a really great relationship with, helping the buyer who never invested in real estate before, really had a one unit of a house, and now they're buying 32 units. How do they do that? Well, you got to have the right property manager for that. You also have to have the right lender for that to help them understand that, hey, look, this is only a 5-year term. This isn't your standard 30-year fixed rate term. So that was a really challenging transaction, but we all learned a lot in doing it. But it's also like the perfect case study of taking somebody who has barely even knows what 1031 exchange is, barely knows what Kansas City is, and helping them through that process. And then also that was a year ago, and they reached out to me, here at the beginning of the year, says, hey, look, we're going to buy some more units. What do you got for me?
Yeah.
So that's one of those, white glove services that we're going to provide to any newbie or even an advanced investor.
So to dig into the case study a little bit deeper, I'm just curious where geographically, where was the seller coming out of, or the buyer coming out of?
Yeah, so they were coming out of San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
Yep, and had $1 million house or whatever it was, or $1 million in equity, and they got in contact with us about 20 days before the property did officially close, but it was past escrow. So they had, in that scenario, 65 days or so to identify these 3 properties.
Okay. And you mentioned that early in the process, you presented them with a bunch of different opportunities. Was that a process of, hey, what do you like? What's your flavor? Or was that, these are real opportunities that you can buy today? When you said, hey, I presented them with a bunch of different opportunities, was that just to get a sense of their buying criteria and what they're looking for in their next investment property?
Yeah, great question. So when a buyer comes to us, they may start off and say, hey, look, I want an 8% cap rate. I need 12% cash on cash return. I need,
Right.
30 units. It's, class A, right? And we go, okay, yeah, cool, love it. But here's what we have available to you. So we do a weekly deal flow email to all of our buyer list, whether you're on a deadline or not, that basically highlights the available deals. But we provide that to our 1031 exchange clients and say, hey, look, here's 10 deals that we sent out to our buyer list last week. Oh, by the way, you're on this list every week now. But what do you think about these? Give me feedback. And if they don't give feedback, we still touch base with them, but the people that give feedback are the ones that we know are the most hungry. Mm-hmm. So, and at times with different buyers, at the beginning, I don't like that one. I don't like that one.
Yeah.
And, and then it's like, okay, cool. I understand you don't like it. I don't either. Or maybe I do like it, but what don't you like about it? And so you have to play almost psychologist a little bit in that you're continually asking questions. Like I said, in that deal I don't like that one. It's in the suburbs. I want something that's urban core. Okay, well, here's an urban core property. Oh, by the way, that property is 100 years old. Ooh, yeah, I don't like it's 100 years old. Well, why not? Well, it's got a flat roof on it. It's a $20,000 roof. Okay, no problem. Well, here's something that's suburban. It's not sexy, but look at your return numbers on it. Ooh, yeah, I really like that. So, I mean, you're constantly trying to pull out of them what they want. You have to make them make their own decision.
Yeah.
Even with the perfect match case study I was talking about earlier, it wasn't like, hey, you need to buy this. It was, what do you think about this one? Oh, I
Hmm.
really like that. Why? Well, it checks all my boxes. So you have to, continuously find out what they're really searching for based on what their yeses and their nos are.
Do you ever run into a scenario as you mentioned, that you're putting out weekly deal flow to your 1031 exchange buyer list? Um, two-part question. Number one, when can a 1031 exchange buyer expect to engage with you from a broker agreement standpoint? At what point in time do you require them to, uh, actually sign a broker agreement before, you spend a significant amount of time with them?
Great question. So we're pretty dang flexible because there's so many different buyers out there, and we feel that our um, cliches that sound our value that we bring is really in our service of value that you can only experience. We can talk about it all day. Oh my gosh, we bring you lenders, we bring you all these different things, but you have to really experience to appreciate it. And you probably don't even appreciate it until 3, 4, 6 months later after you've closed out. But we really don't require them to sign anything with us
Mm.
until we get into a spot where we've got a letter of intent that we're pretty dang close to agreeing on, or maybe we already have agreed on it. Then we'll get an official buyer's rep agreement in place. Um, but it's really not specific to that property because we feel, and we've lost out on deals before, don't get me wrong, where somebody's been on a 1031 exchange deadline. But, and that's part of our process is we've got a really great process in place that we're not spending a lot of our time wasting our time. And so we try to get the engagement and feel out our buyers and even the 1031 guys up front as quickly as we can. And we've had people that have said, no, I'm good on my 1031 exchange. I got properties come back to us 10 days before their deadline's up and say, hey, look, they all fell through or whatever. I say, no problem. Here's a property we think would be great for you. And through that process of them missing out on their other ones, they're like, yeah, these guys really do kind of help me out. So I trust them. I'm going to go with this property.
Yeah.
So, and that's fine. I mean, we don't want to tie anybody up to any kind of agreement at this point until we know that we've got a great property for them that they're going to
Yeah.
like.
Well, and then the next question I have for you is: do you ever run into scenarios where I can imagine that your 1031 exchange clients are wondering, like, how many? Do you ever run into a scenario where you have multiple, buyers that are on your list that are interested in the same property that you're sending out through your email, and then how do you manage
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So that is a good question, and we try to make it pretty dang clear from the beginning that this is first come first serve. I'm doing my best to say, hey, look, this is a great deal for you. You should check it out. And the sooner you can come to an agreement on it, I've already got likely a pro forma. I've got, all the details you need. You can look at my pro forma and say, yes, I want this or I don't, or it's not close or it is, those kind of things. And like I said, I tell them, hey, look, this is a great deal. You should probably put an offer on it. I don't think it's going to last very long. And the clients that, I mean, as we've gone over time, they trust us, and they go, shit, yeah, that is a great deal. I gotta buy that. Or maybe
Yeah,
they say, you know what, it's not for me right now.
sure.
And that's totally fine. So, I mean, usually we don't have too much instant competition on it, but we have had. I mean, there's a recent example here in October where, I had a deal that was an amazing deal. I sent it out to 10 people that are on exchange deadlines, and I told them all the same thing. Hey, look, I don't think this is going to last long. And by that night, it was under contract, and we had a couple people the next day say, hey, look, I'm interested in putting an LOI. And I just said, hey, I'm really sorry, it's under contract, and And if anything changes, we'll let you know. And usually it's like no hard feelings, they
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation, and I appreciate you going into some of the nuance in your process. I think that's helpful to any listeners that maybe are exploring or in a 1031 exchange situation to really try to understand how your process works. I appreciate you sharing your own personal journey as well. That's been helpful to learn a little bit about how you transitioned the space, you got involved from the investing side, and sort of fell in love with it, and then through a mentor sort of got into the commercial real estate space and found this particular niche where you really focus on serving at a high level clients that are in need of a solid 1031 exchange and really facilitating that process with white glove service. So thanks for going into all that with us. I want to start winding down here. I've got a few final questions for you. The first
Sure.
is what's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now in your business that we could all learn from?
The biggest challenge at this moment is, there's always a product issue in multifamily, meaning where are all the great deals at? I need more deals. Everybody wants deals, right? And so generating true off market deals that we can get the information from a seller. There's so many conversations I have with sellers that say, sure, yeah, I'll sell, bring me an offer. It's okay, great. Love to bring you an offer. I need some kind of rent roll, some kind of profit and loss statement. And I'm not willing to share it right now. So that's the biggest challenge, is pulling that information out from the sellers to then be able to present to buyers. And so there's so much that we're trying to do, meeting up with sellers. How often do we call them? How often do we talk to them? And then as the business continues to evolve, is those buyers that were 1031 exchange buyers, and I've got several of them right now. They're like, yeah, what you helped me acquire a couple of years ago, I'm ready to sell now because I want to lever up into bigger and better properties. And so that helps too, is having that continued relationship with those people. Because usually if you bought a property, at some point someday you will sell it, and we plan on being around for ever. And so maintaining all those past relationships is going to be key going forward. And then of course, always having really good qualified buyers is always a challenge, even on 1031 exchange deadlines. And just some of the things you talked about is commitment from those buyers, making sure that they're actually, you're spending a lot of time with them. Are they actually going to buy something, or are they going to flake out at the end? And so continuing to refine our process with that in vetting those buyers is also key to success.
Yeah. What's something that you're just absolutely crushing right now in your business? Something that you're doing really well that we could all learn from?
I think the number one thing that has given us the most success is just cold calling. Cold
Interesting.
calling is the key to, at least from my personality, is the key to success. I came into this business 2.5 years ago. I knew nobody in real estate other than myself and maybe a couple, residential agents. And I met so many people just cold calling. And you don't have to have an elaborate scheme on it. You don't have to have an elaborate script. Picking up the phone. I mean, there's been so many days where I said, I don't want to cold call today. But it's like, okay, here's a number. I'm just going to call it. I don't even care what they say. And, then that's the mindset I have to have, because that's how I generate most of my income. And so anyway, anybody who's like, I can't make a dollar, I can't find the deals I want, cold call, find a list and call people that own property.
Hmm. Love that. And I can hear the listeners in my ear asking the question, all right, what does that conversation sound like? Give us a sense
Sure.
of, what that conversation, how that conversation flows.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm lucky enough in my, and that's one of the reasons why we generated this business, was because the message is very simple. I'm with Exchange Commercial Real Estate. I work with a lot of 1031 exchange buyers. They have a need for a property like you have. And I've got some secrets I'm not going to reveal as far as how that conversation goes, but usually that keeps their guard, that puts their guard down a little bit. That's one. And then two, rather than just straight up ask them, hey, what would you sell this property for? It's like, what are your needs as a property
Mm,
owner? Are you looking to buy more properties? Are you looking to sell? And maybe it's, I'm never going to sell that property, but I got this other one that I hate. Or I'm never going to sell this multifamily, but I got this office space that I'd sell at an 8 cap. Or I've got a space in Joplin, Missouri, or Hutchinson, Kansas that I'd sell. So it's not about that specific property. It's about what are the needs of that owner, and then
mm,
you can kind of see how the conversation goes. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a ton of don't ever call me agains
sure.
and I get this call every day from brokers kind of conversations. You just kind of have to wade through those.
Yeah.
But that's the key is to start.
Love it. Love it. Well, look, Alex, this has been a great conversation. Thanks for going into some detail for us about this process. What's the best way for our listeners to connect with you and learn more about your services there in Kansas City and Missouri?
Yeah, so definitely head to my website. It's exchangecre.com, and that's with an X. You can read a lot about our process. There's a button on that website that says get started. And that's where you complete that form, goes directly to us. And we start the process of finding what your needs are. Even if you're not on an exchange deadline, we do love speaking with buyers. That's our business model.
Love it. So that's exchange, the letter X, change, CRE.com. We've got a link to that in the show notes. So if you're listening right now, you're in a 1031 exchange situation and you want to connect with Alex and learn more about his services, go down into the show notes right now, click on that link and connect up with Alex and his team. Alex, again, honored to have you on the show. Thanks for sharing your personal journey with us and explaining more about your services and how you help 1031 exchange clients find good opportunities in your market there. So appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to connecting with you down the road.
Yeah, thanks, man. Love to be here.